Well, good evening, Pittsburgh. I hope you can hear me wherever you might be on the World Wide Web, on X, live on Facebook and YouTube. It is John Phillips back after some technical problems last week. We probably still have technical problems, but we're going to bring you an hour of sports tonight because, I just couldn't figure out what exactly the problem was last week. But hey, you know what? We're going to give this a go this evening. Hopefully you're tuning in and you can hear me. My name is John Phillips, and welcome to Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We'll do an hour tonight on a variety of topics. We will certainly talk about the ever-going process of Mike McCarthy hiring coaches for his staff here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll probably dabble a little bit in the realm of the Super Bowl. We'll probably talk about the fact that the big news coming out of Sunday was that no African-American head coaches were hired by NFL teams. So there's that to deal with. So we'll get into that. We'll probably touch upon the Penguins, who have been playing very good hockey since the new year started. They are about to approach the Winter Olympic break. They've got 3 games left on their schedule, including the Ottawa Senators tonight. So we'll have that to talk about. Maybe we'll touch upon a little spring training baseball. We're about to start spring training here very, very shortly. And that should be interesting, to say the very least, with Pirates about a month away. Pitchers and catchers are reporting in just about 6 days. So we might get into that a little bit, but I guess we'll start with Mike McCarthy. And to me, there should be no surprise here that a lot of these assistant coaches have connections to him either in Green Bay or in Dallas. And I guess the prevailing wisdom here is that familiarity breeds contempt. And these guys are creatures of habit, especially at the age of 62. I don't think there should have been much to have been made about when Mike McCarthy was hired, expecting him to go out on a limb and start hiring a bunch of people that he has never really worked with before, okay? The guy is bringing in people that he is comfortable with, people he's familiar with, and in a new system with new players, I'm okay with all of that because I think those things will play themselves out in short order. I want to think that the Mike McCarthy hiring is a 5-year cycle for this team to see if he can get them some playoff wins and improve them. And who knows, maybe indeed get back to a Super Bowl. And if not, a changing of the guard by year 4. And that's why a lot of people felt like this was a safe hire for the Roonies in a transition, not so much a rebuild, right? At 10-7, you're not necessarily rebuilding things. You're just trying to get a different perspective from somebody who can come in here and maybe make chicken salad out of the chicken shit that was left behind by the previous administration. I'm sorry to use profanity, but that's just the way it is. So Mike McCarthy has most of his staff in place. It looks like they've made some official hirings on the offensive side. James Campen is offensive line coach. Raymond Chin-Young is going to be their running back coach. Looks like Tom Arth is going to be the quarterback coach. Adam Henry will handle wide receivers. They will have an assistant offensive line coach working with Campen. His name is John Evans. The Steelers have interviewed a number of other people for for offensive passing game coordinator and tight ends positions. Looks like they brought in Saints tight end coach Chase Haslett for an interview. He is the son of former defensive coordinator Jim Haslett. Chase played at IUP. He also coached under Mike McCarthy in Dallas. So, they've got a special teams coordinator in line. It looks like Danny Crossman, who I believe was in Dallas as well. He's got over 2 decades of experience, most recently with the Miami Dolphins. They've hired some other coaches on the defensive side. Jason Simmons on the defensive pass game coordinator position. Scott McCurley, inside linebackers. They've got a chief of staff that's been hired. Again, and this is all familiar. A lot of these are familiar names with Mike Tomlin. And again, I'm somebody who's going to sit here and not pass a whole lot of judgment right now because I expected a lot of this. I really did. I mean, I didn't think McCarthy was going to come in here and try to bring in a whole bunch of new people, especially with him running the offense, right? He's going to call the plays, right? So, the Steelhouse guy out of the Rams probably wasn't going to work for him, right? And I know that they've talked about bringing in some other people. I know they brought ex-quarterback from the NFL recently to interview for the offensive coordinator position. But this should not shock anybody that he's bringing in. And I don't think of them as retreads. I just think of them as people that he's had some success with, right? For what it's worth, his time in Dallas, he won 12 games like 3 times. And he won a playoff game this decade. He won a playoff game this decade, and let's just be completely honest. The work he did with Dak Prescott was pretty good. It was pretty good. Prescott probably had his best seasons in the NFL under Mike McCarthy. Mean Green checking in this evening. Good to hear from you, Mean Green. There are no mincing of words when it comes to the previous administration for the Steelers. You said it better than anyone could have said it. Yeah, again, and I'm not trying to knock a man that has left, okay? But it's not a rebuild. It's definitely not a rebuild. I think there's enough here where you can get something maybe a little bit more, a new perspective, and an offensive-minded coach is going to get some different things out of this team. I've got to believe that. If they can figure out a wide receiver too, right? We know that in most likely that Aaron Rodgers is coming back, okay? We know that most likely Aaron Rodgers is coming back. I think the offensive line, for what it's worth, improved themselves over the course of the regular season. We saw improvement from the offensive line. If they can re-sign Kenny Gainwell, who's going to want a lot of money, he'll get a good bump in his pay. I think it's important that the Steelers try to sign him. But if they can, and they can figure out a wide receiver too, they're going to have some money under the cap, depending on some of these players that they decide to let go of, right? There's a process to all of this. There's, dates on the schedule that they're looking at. Obviously, Omar Khan and, his new coach and the staff are going to sit down and they're going to start trying to figure these things out. If they know they're getting Aaron Rodgers back, they've got a transitional quarterback who's going to hopefully work with whoever they keep here, right? They've got Mason under contract for 1 more year. And McCarthy has talked about his excitement in working with Will Howard. And we'll see how that plays out. He's a 6th-round pick. I'm not expecting anything out of that young kid. When you go in the later rounds, there's a reason why. Let's see how things play out over the next 30 days. Once the staff is completely figured out and they get to the business of if Aaron Rodgers is going to commit, which they need to know before they get to the draft. Quite frankly, they need to know by the end of this month. They need to know by the end of this month. If I'm the Steelers, I have to ask Aaron Rodgers to give them an answer. It doesn't have to be made public per se, right? If Aaron wants to do that kind of dance and McCarthy's okay with it and Steeler ownership is okay with it, but they know they're going to get him, then they can plan accordingly, right? Because I don't want to see them move on a quarterback, at least until round 2 or 3, if they make a decision to pick somebody. Right? If they decide to go out and get somebody in the 2nd or 3rd round, okay, fine. right? Okay, fine. There might be some value there that they can get with a third round pick. I really would like to see them use the first round pick with a wide receiver. And as far as the second round picks, and I don't have the list of all of them. They have 12 picks coming up in this year's draft, right? They have 12 picks coming up. And who knows what can happen on the day of round one, right? With 12 picks, they're going to have some opportunity to maybe make some moves. I don't see them getting into the top 2 or 3, which means if the handful of quarterbacks that are in the first round that are of first round caliber, truly, you're probably not going to get to them. Most likely, they could maybe make a deal. I don't know how they're going to do that. Who do you package up? Right? Everybody wants to see TJ Watt go with his $40 million a year. I don't know how you package him up and get anything more than maybe a third round pick, which is crazy to say, but you're carrying a ton of money on that contract. And he's on the, he's 31 now, and he's had some injuries. So there's all of that to deal with. I don't think, and I think Watt can bounce back and actually have a better season next year. But, the fact of the matter is that a lot of this will play out over the course of the next 30 days. And by the time we get into early March, we should have a good indication whether or not McCarthy's got Aaron coming back. And if he does, I'll take that. I'm going to have to take it. Mean Green says, I can't imagine Jaylen Warren in the Steelers backfield without Gainwell right now. It would definitely weaken this team. Now, and again, you've got free agency out there, right? They were able to bring Gainwell in on a nice little 1-year deal, but, he's eligible to talk to 31 other teams right now. And, even though the Steelers have what I believe is going to be 50, maybe $60 million of cap space, and again, this does not include anybody that they release, depending on the cap hit and all of that. All of how all of those numbers work out. That's what Omar Khan's job is to do, is to kind of have that in place so that when they are sitting down and evaluating free agency, when they're evaluating what the NFL draft holds and exactly who they may want to bring back in terms of their unrestricted free agents, that will play a role. I'd like to think Kenny Gainwell would like to stay in Pittsburgh, but I don't know that. I don't know that exactly. You're welcome to leave comments wherever you might be. If you're checking us out on X or on our YouTube channel, we thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. This is Steel City Sunday. We'll have 4 shows for you this week. 4 shows this week, and moving forward, 4 shows, 4 nights a week at 7 o'clock. I'm working on getting some guests in here. If I can plow through the rest of this internet stuff, I think I should be able to have some guests. I'm working on having a couple people from Santa Clara later in the week that are at the Super Bowl. In 30 plus years of covering sports, you get to know a few people, and I know a few people that are out there covering this week's Super Bowl. We'll see if we can have some people later on in the week. Trey Carney of Carney Media, who has been covering the Steelers, is going to try to get in with us later in the week as well. He's a busy guy. That guy tweets a lot. he tweets an awful lot, but he has good Steeler content. I like Trey. He's a sharp young mind. Keeps his eye on things and puts out a ton of content, which is really good. So we'll hopefully have Trey on later this week as well. And we're just going to continue to try to bring you as many guests as we can and try to keep the conversation light, but also dive into some other topics. And we'll talk a little bit about, I know Bobani Jones has a podcast, and he was blaming white people for the fact that, no black head coaches were hired in this NFL hiring cycle. 10 openings, okay? And there's something to be said about it. I don't, again, he's entitled to say what he wishes. We'll talk a little. I'll play you the clip that's been making the rounds on social media today, and we'll get into that here in a little bit more. But I do want to get to a few more comments before I do that exactly. And again, if you have any thoughts on the hires so far. I'm kind of curious as to how you feel about the hiring process that we've seen with the Steelers to this point, and their coaches, and a lot of them having relationships with Mike McCarthy. Again, Mean Green says, have the Steelers given Aaron Rodgers a timeline to respond? I don't know if we've found that out yet, Mean Green. That's a good question. I suggested that, when the season was over and obviously the Tomlin decision came down, within all of that and before the McCarthy hire, I felt like it was fair to give him 30 days, right? Give him 30 days to decompress from the season. They hire a head coach about 2 weeks after, not quite after, maybe it was 2 weeks. Maybe it was a little bit more than 2 weeks from when Mike stepped down to when they actually made the decision to hire Mike McCarthy. So I felt like, by the time we get into late February or at the very end of the month, I think that's a fair time to have a decision from him, right? Obviously, Mike has had some sort of communication with Aaron. I believe he has made statements to that nature, that they have spoken in some capacity, whether that's via text or actually over the phone. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that they have had some sort of communication, if it was congratulatory and whatnot. And hey, I'm going to catch up with you. When's a good time? Aaron will work himself through all of this and make some sort of decisions. Okay. And make some sort of decisions that will be, in his best interest. I think he'll come back if he can make 20 million again. If he has incentives in place and he can make another 18, 20 million, I think Aaron Rodgers comes back for one more season. And I think that's it. He'll be 43 by the end of next year. Once the season does wrap up, I think that's probably a wrap for him. I believe that makes 21 seasons in the NFL. I don't see him playing past that. Look, he's not the mobile Aaron Rodgers we knew from 15 years ago, but he did complete about, close to 70% of his passes for about 3,300 yards. His touchdown to interception ratio was pretty good. The offense looked way better under him than anybody else since Ben Roethlisberger, in 2018, because Ben was hurt in 2019. And look, he didn't look good in his last few seasons, right? That COVID year, I don't know how they went 11-0. It was all smoke and mirrors, right? They got blown out at home by Cleveland, 2021, and then 2022, 21 being his last season, right? He just literally willed them to the playoffs with a bad arm, right? Again, one of the most guttiest performances I've ever seen by an athlete in any kind of sport, right? You think of Kirk Gibson's Game 7, bottom of the ninth home run that helped the Dodgers beat the A's in Game 1 of the World Series in '88, right? He had two bad legs. They literally brought him up to the plate. He struggled to even get up to the plate. I don't know how he did it. An incredible at bat. But, I mean, that performance by Roethlisberger in that last game on the road at Baltimore to get the game tied and get it into overtime where they eventually won, he just literally willed them into the playoffs. And, of course, they went to Kansas City and got beat up. And that was it for Ben. That was it for Ben. It was a gutty performance. But Rodgers, I think, can provide them what they need next year in a transitional year for McCarthy's first here in Pittsburgh. Can they improve? I think they can. I think they can improve under McCarthy. I think they can improve under these new coordinators that they're bringing in, these coaches that they're bringing in. I think a fresh perspective might help the guys that do come back. And I think it might reinvigorate some of them, quite frankly. I know that they were disenfranchised when Mike walked in and said, hey, I'm done, right? We got some of that from the week after. It's taken a little bit of time. Adam Thielen, about a week and a half after Mike retired, and he's officially retired as well. He went on a podcast and said, Tomlin came in and basically said, I'm not good enough. I don't have it anymore, right? Words to that effect, and that he made this decision to quit, right? Stunning to say the least. Those words from Thielen, I should say, right? To paraphrase, I'd have to go back and actually look for the quote from the podcast, but it was to that effect that Tomlin basically said, "Hey, I don't have it anymore. I'm done. I'm quitting. I've had enough." And again, as I've said, he should have stepped away 2-3 years ago, right? I've been tooting this horn since the Jacksonville loss, right? I thought the writing was on the wall back then. And, we had to go through, 2019, misery, 2020, I know playoffs in 19, Ben comes back, COVID year, just an awful playoff loss at home to the Browns, and then to crawl into the playoffs and then just, get run out of Kansas City and then Buffalo and then again in Baltimore last year. And then, of course, this past season with the loss to the Houston Texans, a game that they were, in for about 3 quarters, but really at the end of the day, they couldn't get an offensive touchdown drive together. They really didn't put up any kind of offense in the second half of that game. And, they gave up 2 defensive touchdowns in that fourth quarter in a 30-6 blowout loss. I mean, it was it ended the way it probably should have ended under Mike Tomlin, right? Not really completely surprised. I certainly am not. And again, how it all played out, it's done. It's over with. And now we have to look ahead to what possibly this team can look like. One other comment, I believe, from Mean Green. I think we've got, let's see. Oh, yeah, we've already talked to you. We've already put that one up there. Hey, thanks for checking us out this evening. We will be back on the air again tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Just in case you were wondering, you can follow us on our social media pages, all at Steel City Sunday. You can follow us on X, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook. We broadcast live on YouTube, Facebook, and X 4 nights a week, starting at 7 o'clock. If you're not following us on any of those, please give us a follow. We would certainly appreciate it. Okay, so I do want to turn to some other topics. I think it's very important that we get into a few other things here. And I do want to dive a little bit into this Bomani Jones comment, blaming white people for the fact that no African Americans were hired in this coaching cycle. Okay. Look, race gets brought up an awful lot, probably more than it should. But for some people, they have an axe to grind on a regular basis when it comes to this type of subject matter. Some people make their living just talking about it constantly, and Bomani has become one of those over the last decade. Okay, if that's how you want to make a living, that's your business, right? And it's not an unfair topic at times. I know Paul Zeiss mentioned it today on X, saying, hey, 10 openings and not a single African-American coach is hired, right? Robert Saleh was hired, but he is of Lebanese descent. He is a minority, but he is not African-American. So, as I look at these sorts of things, I try to, have an even keel perspective on what I'm looking at. I want to listen to what people's opinions are, or at least what they have to say about the matter. And so when I saw this comment from Bomani Jones today, just kind of shook my head a little bit, because it's Bomani being Bomani. But let's play this for you, and then I will have some things to say about it. Give me just 1 second.
Is not that the Rooney Rule is ineffective. That would be like saying that the problem with cancer is that you can't fix it with an aspirin. That is not about the limitations of aspirin. That's about the problem with cancer. And the NFL has a cancer of racism when it comes to hiring people at these levels. The problem in this case is the white people who do, or more accurately, do not do some of this hiring. The issue there is them. The issue is the owners. It's all these people on top. They are the problem. I don't think that we could ever truly have any measure of solution on this until we are more honest about who the issue is. The issue is the people who ultimately decided to enact a Rooney Rule just because Johnny Cochran, rest in peace, was about to sue them into the ground. When it comes to progress in the presence of racism, it is not me and my people who need to make progress. It is white people that need to make progress. It is not us who created these circumstances. It is them who created these circumstances, and they are the ones that need to do better. And as I say every year about this, the biggest winner from the Rooney Rule and breaking down those barriers of racism would be the white people.
Yes. There we go. Okay. I think that's it right there. It's white people's fault once again, according to Bomani Jones. Okay. So since the Rooney Rule was enacted, and I believe the year was either 2004 or 2005. So the Rooney Rule's been around and in effect for about 22 seasons now. Okay. 27, according to my research, there have been 27 African-American men that have been hired as a head coach in the National Football League since that time, okay? 26, I take that back. Obviously, Tony Dungy was hired prior to that. But so 26, roughly, since the Rooney Rule has been enacted. And so starting with the idea that the Rooney Rule was put in place to increase the opportunities for African-American coaches in the NFL, it has done that, right? We've seen progress, tremendous progress in terms of, African-American men being hired as general managers, obviously in the head coaching ranks. But in this particular cycle of coaching hires, we did not get a black man hired as a head coach. Is it racism? That's the question here. Is it racism? I don't know. I don't know. I know that it's a closed, it's a very exclusive group of owners, right? That are particular about things in terms of how they hire. We know. We saw once they saw that John Harbaugh became available to be the next head coach potentially of the Giants. They pretty much circled the wagons on him, and it would take very long, right? I mean, there was. I think did a quick job in terms of hiring a few on that. They hired pretty quickly when Sean McDermott was shown the door. I would preface this by saying, look, you've got to, we're not privy to the interview process that takes place for each individual. I will say about Flores, since he did interview here, and I was really excited at the potential of Flores, possibly becoming the next head coach of this team. Brian Flores, of course, was head coach in Miami, was removed under bizarre circumstances, to say the very least. Without getting too much into the great details, of course, he sued because of that. and settled eventually, is coaching again. He is a coordinator. He is in Minnesota next year like he was last year. Came to the Steelers as a special assistant under Mike Tomlin for a season. And I thought there was a possibility that he could get hired here. And he was at the top of my list. He was at the top of my list. But sometimes in a scenario like that, an individual may have harmed themselves more so through the act of suing the league, suing the Dolphins that he did, and that could impact potential future hire down the road. As far as the other candidates that are being interviewed at these other organizations, again, we're not privy to how the interviews go. And if the interviews don't go well and somebody comes in and is much better and convinces an organization that they're going to be a better option, then that's the way they're going to go, right? There's 3 African-American head coaches in the NFL right now, and that represents about 9% of the entire league. 32 teams, 3 African-American head coaches, about 9%. African-American men make up 6% of the U.S. population. Now, the 3/4 of the players are African-American, right? About 3/4 are. So you think that there might be some more representation because of that. And I think this was a strange cycle. I'm not making excuses up. Just think it was an odd cycle. And yeah, some teams rush through the process because they are fixated on somebody that they believe is going to help their team. And they bring in some coaches. They give them a courtesy interview, if you will. I don't know how they changed the Rooney Rule to improve it, right? How do you structure something to force teams to hire? If one African-American head coach would have been hired, would that have been enough? Would Bomani Jones be still blaming white people if only one of the 10 hires was a black man? Would he be blaming white people if it was 2 hires? Right? So at what point is there satisfaction? Right? The answer is there is no point. Not to a Bomani Jones, at least. And he is entitled to say and feel as he wishes, but we are not privy to those conversations and how they played out in all of those scenarios, assuming that there were 2 minority interviews granted per team. That's 20 interviews. We probably could assume that 3, maybe 4 of those teams knew who they wanted and probably went out, maybe even half. How do you fix this? Is it something you can even fix? I say no. I don't think it's anything you can fix. It doesn't necessarily mean it's racism, however. That's the whole kick to all of this. It's a never-ending cycle of just rhetoric and anger, and it's sometimes it's displaced, sometimes it's warranted. I think it's fairly rare, although I did say last week when Shedeur Sanders was named to the Pro Bowl that the NFL loves racism, right? They love that because it gets people talking. Mean Green says, why do these sports personalities have to make hiring coaches a race thing? Because that's how they make a living, right? I don't pay attention to Bomani Jones, but I saw his clip flying around a couple times today, and I thought, I know what this is about. I might as well go check it out, and I want to talk about it. And I don't have a problem talking about it. Right? I don't have a problem talking about race relations in this country or when it comes to hiring in professional sports. There certainly are plenty of African-American men coaching NBA teams, right? There's certainly plenty in that league for sure, right? And I guess what's the number? I would ask Bomani Jones, what would be the number that would have satisfied you this cycle? Would it have been 5? Would it have been all 10? Right? What's the number exactly that should have been met? I don't know if he could give you an answer that's fair. Because then that puts him in a corner. Well, if it was 3, it would have been acceptable. Okay, 3. Is it possible that a candidate got overlooked because somebody was fixated on somebody else? Probably. But how many of those are we talking about here in this cycle of 10 head coaches, which was a lot? It was the most I think the league has ever had in one season, in one off season. 10. What would have been the acceptable number? I don't think there's an answer to that, which is why this cycle continues to permeate and create headlines and gets people talking and clicking and making comments and saying stupid things. And I'm not talking about commentators on our side of things. I'm just talking about, in part, not everyone, but it is a legitimate question to ask. I will say that. It is a legitimate question to ask. And again, I don't think that there's any way you can change the Rooney Rule that's going to improve a team or give a team more of a avenue to hire somebody who's a minority. Okay, in this league, when you're talking about billion-dollar properties, the hiring process of a head coach is such a finite thing, and it can make the difference between tens of millions of dollars, maybe even $50 million in revenue, $100 million in revenue for teams. And so, yeah, they go into these incredible stretches where they are giving, look at the Cleveland Browns. Look how long it took the Cleveland Browns to hire a head coach. They asked 6 specific questions of the people they were bringing in on what they would do over certain scenarios, one of them including, how would you coach Shedeur Sanders? Right? That's a whole other topic right there that can be discussed, right? And how Shedeur was really treated by the Browns or not. A lot of people were surprised at the hire of Todd Monken. So, yeah, they need a tremendous amount of change in Cleveland, and I thought they really needed an offensive-minded coach. But not a lot of people like to hire, right? They are not a big fan of the Todd Monken hire. Maybe a Clint Kubiak would have been better suited to come in there and help, get Shedeur Sanders up and running. Right? All the hype around him, and it's manufactured for a reason. Shedeur not a particularly good 7-game stretch. None of the quarterbacks played well in Cleveland last year, right? None of the quarterbacks played well. He's going to probably start he's going to start the season next year. There's no doubt in my mind, right? There's no doubt in my mind. Mind you, they have a guy who is coming back next year that's, got a $240 million contract. Keep that in mind, right? He also likes his feet. I'm just saying. At least, it was alleged. I don't know if that's something that, plays into who's actually can take a snap under center in the NFL, right? But I can guarantee you that Shedeur Sanders is going to start next year, and it will take Shedeur Sanders, other than a complete and total collapse, it'll take an injury for them to remove him as a starter for the Browns next year. Unless he utterly just craps the bed, it'll take an injury for him not to start next year. And that includes Deshaun Watson. We'll see how Monken plays it out, right? He was clearly brought in to get Shedeur Sanders up to speed to be the starter on that team, okay? And would I anoint him the starter heading into next year? No. I would want to make sure that it's an open competition between, Dylan Gabriel, who is clearly going to be 3 at this point, and understandably so. Deshaun Watson, it's a 2-man race, but I honestly just think that the Browns are under an immense amount of pressure, probably also from the league, to make sure that Shedeur is the starter. They desperately need him to succeed. The league desperately needs him to succeed. And a lot of people that are riding him and promoting him, they desperately want to be right about Shedeur and the fact that he dropped to the 5th round and that it was, again, racism and cronyism, and the league had it out against him. He's a brash young black man. He speaks his mind. His dad's loud. He's bombastic. He had his number retired in Colorado. All that's a bunch of bunk. The quarterback position in this league is so critical to success. And you've got to surround him with weapons. That's the first thing. You got to give him an offensive line first, right? That offensive line is not very good, right? So that's part of the problem. He's not a running quarterback. He does not run. He's got 4.65 speed, so he's not super fast. Sanders is going to stay in the pocket more. Now, he can be mobile when he needs to be, but he does not have the speed of a Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have the wheels of a Jalen Hurts, right? He doesn't have that breakaway speed that some of the smaller quarterbacks do have. And he's tall. I think he's 6'4", 6'5". So he's a different type of quarterback in and of himself. He's not a traditional running, passing quarterback type. So you have to give him protection, especially when it comes to throwing the football. He's going to need time to throw the football. Can he process in 2.5 to 3 seconds? That's the real key. Like, if Shedeur can figure that out, he's going to go a long way. He'll go a lot farther than most will in this league. I'll say that much. I don't anticipate him being super successful, but I might be wrong. Right? His numbers were not very good. Let's not kid ourselves. Right? Let's not kid ourselves. His numbers were not very good. He's got a long way to go to be a top 10 tier quarterback in this league. He's nowhere close to that. He's at the very bottom. And I think statistically he was at the bottom or somewhere in that range when all the numbers kind of finally shook out. If you have some comments, you're welcome to drop them down below if you're watching us on X or on Facebook or on YouTube. John Phillips, we're happy that you could be joining us this evening. We are Pittsburgh Sports Tonight here until 8 o'clock this evening. Don't forget, we are part of the It's a Wrap Sports Network. I would like to make sure that I plug Maddie B and the good folks in Philadelphia. So we belong to a group called It's a Wrap Sports, the It's a Wrap Sports Network, focusing primarily on Philadelphia sports. They have shows for the Eagles, the Flyers. They're usually crying about Sidney Crosby on that one a lot. I will say that much. They have shows for baseball. They cover the Phillies, the 76ers. They do soccer. I know they do an indoor lacrosse show. They have evening shows, Maddie B, 4 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday at 9 o'clock. Recently, I did the Sunday morning AM show, which I enjoyed immensely. Those guys on the morning shows do a pretty good job. There is a wide variety of shows that they do broadcast. They have Philly AM. That show is also a part of It's a Wrap Sports. We are a part of their network. We appreciate them supporting us. And there's Philly Sports AM with Al and Mike. Mike Lauro also does a props, locks, and parlay show. He's a little bit of a degenerate gambler. That's why I like him more than anything else. He also does a Penn State football show during the football season. That's Mike Lauro, all part of the It's a Wrap Sports Network. And if you want to check some of their programming out, go check them out on X, all the social media sites, It's a Wrap Sports. That's our schedule for this week. We do a lot of nightly programming. There is, like I mentioned, a weekend morning show, Philly AM Sports. I got a chance to do that one about a week and a half ago, which was fun. Then when Mike McCarthy got hired, they got me on there and we talked about a variety of Pittsburgh subjects. It was nice to be able to chat with those guys, and it's been good. I'm very happy that we are part of It's a Wrap Sports, and we'll continue to build that relationship with those folks out there. But that's our lineup for the week on It's a Wrap Sports. As I mentioned, we'll have 4 shows this week at 7 o'clock. We'll have some more guests lined up for you mid-late week. I want to make sure that, this lag issue that I'm suffering from right now, and I have a brand new laptop. It's got plenty of RAM. I don't know what's going on. But I used this laptop all season long when we were at North Park Lounge, Richland, doing the Steel City Sunday pregame and postgame shows. Not a single issue all year. Bring guests on, can hear them fine. Everything's in tune and simpatico. They can hear me. I can hear them. Conversation back and forth is nice. As soon as I start doing the evening show here, and I have a brand new router. I have a separate internet connection from the one I have up here at home. But hopefully you're able to hear us, and hopefully you're enjoying what we're able to do. We will continue to add more topics and programming through the course of the winter time. Of course, we will talk a lot about others, but certainly we want to talk about other things as well, including the Pittsburgh Penguins, who apparently have jumped out to a 1-0 lead over the Ottawa Senators. So the Penguins playing Ottawa tonight in a game. Look, right now the Penguins are doing extremely well in the Eastern Conference right now, and they're in the Metropolitan Division competing, and they're, of course, playing Atlantic Division rival Ottawa right now, 1-0 at the end of the first period. The Penguins right now, they're doing pretty good. They're sitting in second place of the Metropolitan right now. If that were to equate to the end of the season, they would get a home playoff series. They'd have a home playoff series where they would get 4 games in a 7-game series. They've played extremely well. They began the year hot, and then they cooled off and into December. And then once the New Year's came around, they had a really great January. And so far in February, they're off to a decent start. But right now, the Penguins have a 1-0 lead at the end of the first period at home tonight. And then they have 2 more games left in February here before they break for the Winter Olympics. They've got the game tonight against Ottawa, tomorrow at the Islanders, and then Thursday they go to Buffalo to play the Sabres, and then they will be taking off a total of 3 weeks. 3 weeks before they come back and resume NHL play because the Winter Olympics, I believe, are in France this year. Say France or Italy, one of the two. I think it's Italy. And so, a lot of the NHL, not all, a lot of the NHL players, but a good portion of the NHL players are going to be. But the Penguins are sitting in a good spot right now. As I had mentioned, they are sitting in the second place of the Metropolitan. That's going to give them an opportunity potentially once the season concludes, the regular season concludes towards the end of April. They'll have an opportunity to, if they can be in that top 4. And right now, I mean, look at how well they're playing. They have, and Sidney Crosby. Again, I hate to mention one particular player. I mean, it's the fact of the matter is that he has become an ageless man. It seems like, right? Sidney Crosby has become this, this deity type figure in Pittsburgh, right? Rivaled only by Le Magnifique. And I don't know, he could win probably 2 more Stanley Cups. And I don't know if people would look at him as the greatest hockey player to ever put on a Penguins uniform. And they wouldn't be wrong in suggesting it. But for those of us that watched Mario Lemieux play, we know that he will always be the greatest hockey player in the history of the Penguins. And you could definitely make the argument that he was the greatest hockey player in the history of the NHL. That's a topic for another day, perhaps. Maybe we can bring on some people at some point in time as we get closer to the playoffs to talk about Mario Lemieux. If you saw him play before his first retirement, and this was before the Hodgkins, and he had back issues, as it were, early in his career. He had these problems. I don't even know if I can describe how incredible he was to watch. It's words are lost in terms of describing his pure greatness. Mario was just really truly in a league of his own. And we can talk about his goals per game scoring average and how it's light years ahead of virtually anybody else that played in the league, with the exception of one person, that's Mike Bossy. And, Bossy was only 1/10 or 1/100th of a point better than Mario. Mario only played 915 career NHL games. That's the other thing that people forget about Mario. If he had been healthy and did not have Hodgkins and did not take a few years off, he probably would have hit 18. He would have probably hit 2,000 points. I think he would have probably hit 2,000 points in his career. That's how great he was. That's how dominant a player he was. It's fun to look back on him and think about how, and just see some highlights. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself, watching a highlight or two of Mario's, playing career, and it takes your breath away sometimes. It takes your breath away to watch how dominant he was. His hands, his power. It was just really a spectacular thing to come across. But Sidney Crosby having an amazing year. 58 points, 27 goals. It's on pace for like 98 points this year. It would be crazy to even think that. I think he's 38. To think that he could reach 100 points at his age, he's certainly going to reach 40 goals. He's going to certainly reach 40 goals this year. He's having a spectacular season. And he's not the only one, I might add. He's not the only one on this team that's playing exceptionally well. Evgeny Malkin has played well. We've gotten great play from Ryan Shea. There have been some other players that they have brought in that have done very well for themselves this year. They're just getting play from everybody right now, and they're fourth line. And so it's fun to watch. I will say that once the show's over here in a few minutes, I'll probably throw the hockey game on and check them out. I walked away from hockey at a period of time years ago because I didn't think that the sport was really doing itself any favors in the mid-90s. They went away from the free-flowing, attacking hockey that the NHL had put out as a product in the 80s. If anybody grew up in that era, watching hockey, watching Montreal, watching Quebec, watching the Sabres, watching the Penguins, the Flyers. Edmonton obviously was a high-scoring team. Minnesota had good offensive teams. The Blackhawks were good and always a perennial team to contend with. For what it's worth, the Rangers and the Capitals had good teams that could score. There was plenty of good hockey to be watched in the 1980s, and then a decade later, it just kind of switched. And, when Sidney, when Mario retired the second time, the franchise was kind of downtrodden again. Mario bought the team. They got Crosby. They ended up getting Malkin. They got Marc-Andre Fleury, not necessarily in that order. I think it was Fleury, and then it was Sid, and then Gino. And then, obviously the transformation of that franchise to play in, back-to-back cups, winning in 2009 after losing the year prior to Detroit, and then, staggering in between there during the Dan Bylsma era before they moved on to Sully, and then, of course, winning cups in 16 and 17. It became fun to watch the Penguins again because they had an interesting team that was, that had style and could score, and they had personalities that were fun to follow along with. This seems kind of reinventing itself right now, which is good. It's good. I know that a lot has been made about the attendance. They are like 28th in attendance in the league, at better than 16,000 a game. I think they're at 87% capacity right now. I will tell you that I went to my very first game in that building. I know this is hard to believe, but in December, I got 2 tickets. Somebody gave me some tickets. I ended up going by myself because I couldn't get one of my kids to go with me. And they were like, Daddy, why don't you just buy some tickets? I'm like, and then I was looking at the prices. I'm like, oh my God, it's not cheap. A ticket's, I think the cheapest ticket you can get is like $98 or $100. I'm not saying that they don't run specials. I know they used to run Student Rush and some other things, but look, it's not cheap to buy a ticket to go to an NHL game, right? I've told the story before, I think, of when I was in high school, my senior year, a kid that I grew up with had a 20 game plan, and I would pay him so much each. Like if he didn't want to go, he would say, "Hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to go to these games. Would you be interested?" And the tickets were $5 on the 20 game plan, and so I would go to 4 or 5 or 6 games through his 20 game plan. It was a $5 bill. I could park downtown for free. I could bring a couple Wendy's hamburgers into the building, and I sat up and eat at the very top. And it was the view was fantastic. If anybody didn't get a chance to go to a game at the Civic Arena, sorry that you couldn't. It was a grand old building. It did need to go, but it was a great. I thought it was a great venue for hockey, especially up in E. You could see everything. It was great. And I sat in other places in the building and sat up on the ice and C and B and all of those. There wasn't a spot in that building I probably didn't see a game at. I saw probably 15 games in Mario's rookie year. I was 14. I was a high school freshman. And I went to about 14 or 15 games his rookie year. My cousin, who was a little bit younger than me, was a big fan, and my mother allowed me to travel via bus, and his mother would bring him to Braddock Hills because he lived in Penn Hills, and I would get us on the bus, and we'd go down, and my dad would pick us back up, and we went to a lot of games in 1984 and 1985, and through those early portions. And then, again, the tickets were dirt cheap to sit in E for that kind of money, and to look at the pricing now, I think that's part of the reason why, right? And look, everything's more expensive nowadays. We're 40 years from all of that actually having happened. So, naturally pricing and costs are going to go up, but I think that's probably one of the reasons why is that a family is priced out in going to an NHL game. Great building, by the way, right? PPG Paints is a great building to watch a hockey game. That new scoreboard, I don't know how new that scoreboard is. I think it's really relatively recent. The sound system, my goodness, it pumps right through your body. And I had a good time, even though they played Toronto and got their brains beat in. All right, that's our show for this evening. I appreciate the handful of you sticking around and listening to me yammer on here for the last hour. Mean Green, thank you for your comments. I'll be back again tomorrow. Check out our X page for content, and for tomorrow's schedule should have a guest, possibly 2. We'll see how that all plays out. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for participating in tonight's broadcast. My name is John Phillips. I thank you for watching Pittsburgh Sports Tonight. We'll do it again tomorrow, 7 p.m. live here on X, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll talk to you mañana, and have yourself a good evening. And enjoy.